You're on.
I'll bring it downstairs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We did a fun one with PTO last night.
Let's do it.
Sounds wonderful.
Oh, I meant parent teacher organization. There are too many.
In this room.
I'm pasting a picture into the notice. You're gonna need the picture. Which dog are you?
Okay. Oh, okay.
Heather and Miles, you need to look at the dog. Which dog are you feeling like today? It's in the notes. Oh yeah, someone just scrolls down a tiny bit, then we'll be up there.
Down?
Down.
Down.
There you go.
Oh.
Keep going, there you go, that's all of them.
Oh.
You can just.
Oh.
Our fourth grade team is amazing at having these like different themes.
Alright, well, I'm definitely two.
Tell us why.
I'm just like, I passed to Kenny.
I guess I'm gonna say number 4, and very much the same reason as Heather. That one sort of made me like questioning, like, what's happening. Curious.
Yeah, or 7, with the same attitude kind of. But I'm also like a 9 because my birthday next week and my twin brother also has the same birthday as I do. So,
Really?
yeah, that's how it works. And he's having a surprise.
What
Or he's having a same birthday, and he is throwing a murder mystery party at his house in Portland, Oregon, and I'm going, but he doesn't know I'm going. Like all of his friends know that I'm going.
Oh my gosh,
So I'm
that's
like
so cool.
very excited for that.
It's awesome.
Well, maybe one. I wish it was Friday. Does it happen to you sometimes that short weeks are like completely long? Yeah, like, that's what happened to me. So I feel like still.
Yeah.
Carlos, I'd rather you say the short weeks are the longest weeks.
Yeah, right.
The longest.
But yeah, one.
I think I'm kind of an 8. I'm real excited when my students are out this year and we're getting ready for CMAS and we're going. And I'm like high energy and like telling them what they need to do and we're gonna write so much and it's gonna be so much fun. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah, it is. We're gonna do it. Like, oh, worry, we're gonna practice math now. Are you ready to practice division? They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, we are. So I think number 8 is how I act in front of the kids.
I'm a 2 because of the weather and I want to first track meet tomorrow and I'm not really sure. Well, that's gonna feel tomorrow. It's in Junction, but they're actually expecting to snow. So we'll see. That'll be really interesting.
Well, now I am also a 2 because my daughter is doing outdoor ed in Junction tomorrow night.
It's supposed to feel like 1 more afternoon.
Okay,
So
it's a long
hopefully.
night.
Sorry.
Good to know.
I think we're probably like 2.
That number 3 sounds very curious to me. And number 3. Okay, curious. He wants to know more. He's like, what's up there? What's behind that? I want some of it, so that's fine.
I have split personality. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8.
It just depends on who walks in my room next, what you're gonna get, so. You know, good luck with that, but you get a little empathy, you get a little, what is going on with this? It's kind of interesting, or, yes, we're working on budget. And we're gonna get this done, and tenacity, or I don't know what I'm gonna be. This is all.
Go a couple of ways, like maybe I wanna show my teeth, but I know I have to play nice. Or maybe there's just a little disgust with the weather. I don't know, but I just feel like that's where I'm at.
My family is in town, and my little sister gets here today, and my brother's in town, and my parents are in town, and they are a lot. And we're all going to a show at Takata tomorrow night, and I'm kind of terrified, so I am a 9.
Oh.
Excited and like, oh my gosh, are we gonna make it through? I will delete that out of the notes now, unless anybody wants to.
It's important.
Maybe we should end with that one too.
Yeah.
I got money on a pug. Yeah, maybe.
Let's do it. Okay, forecast.
You can kind of see those bullets of what we had talked about wanting to cover today. And so thought that we would jump in and bring back that IBB summit to look at that 25-26 financial forecast. And I think part and parcel of that, and we can get there as part of that bullet too, is that after the last time this group met, we made the revisions that, you know, that I really wanted to walk back and mean that instead of coming out with that forecast and saying 1.3 to below 1.5 to health insurance, it should have looked like if you go scroll down to looking for
Almost a,
oh, yep. That's, I was like, should have been there. Delete out of that. It's a revised one. And if you go into the sort of, if y'all want to get there too on your own screens, if I'll
is
link it.
it in
If
here?
you go into certified IBB's folder, it should say updated. There's
Updated 3/3.
I can put the link in there for you.
Yeah, I'm just.
If you can put it under notes, I'll just.
Yeah,
that might be
yeah,
faster.
sorry.
That's okay.
9 isn't a little, did you put it in person?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Updated, okay, here we go again.
What slide you want to get to 23. Should have read that. Right? And then we need to explain how we got there.
Yes.
So. I think. What would be helpful is maybe if we go back to 20. Because this is where we start kind of tracking what, when we look at the 24-25 budget. And we compare 24-25 to 25-26, what are we looking at in terms of changes? And how does that shift funds available that would then lead into the conversation about what we have available for salaries and benefits? That then results in that, you know, kind of gets us to 25-26 forecast to that, what is for this team important, 1.7 million to work on in terms of staff salaries and health insurance. Does that make sense? That sound right? Yes, okay. So I wonder if, is it best to,
Wait, can I
Totally.
Because when I read 23, it says 1.7. But then under it, it says 2.8 for salaries and health insurance, so are we working? Wouldn't it be the 2.8 that we're trying to figure out where we're at, how we got to the 2.8?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, you're right, because the 61% is kind of a clear, that was 61% of 2.8.
2.8,
Okay.
so it's
Does
really
that
the
make
2.
sense?
Yeah, so it turns into the same 1.7
You're right.
to add to.
By coincidence.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, because you were looking at that,
The one.
I'm
above it,
sorry,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, so would it help, maybe if Christy kind of talks through what we're looking at in terms of this forecast for 25, 26, and we just take it through slowly, and I think, you know, because this budget is in development, as we get to, hey, we need to see more here, or that's not here, I think when Christy and I checked in on this today, and it was like, what additional will be needed to explain this 25, 26 forecast? We weren't sure, so as we go through it, if it feels like, do we have a detail of that, because we get more information there, that we'll just keep a big list as we go through it, does that sound all right? So I wonder if we go lead back to the revenue picture for, just back to your slide. There,
The down one.
yep, no, that one, and if we can just talk a little bit through what we're looking, what's gonna be different, what are we anticipating as different 25, 26 over the current year?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
And, the one thing that I wanna know is that we can always anticipate there's gonna be wild changes in school district budgets because we're based on legislation. But this year is a bit exceptional to that level, just because of the added question on federal funding. And then plus the change in the formula for the, total program funding change for equalization, that's all changed. So there's a lot of things that are changing underneath our feet. The other thing that's changed obviously is that new CFO, and what I'm trying to do in the midst of all this is to really write our systems. And as our past, and this is part of how we got here, is our past budget spreadsheets and things like that really had a lot of mistakes in them and errors, and it wasn't intentional, it was just a matter of a lack of time to be able to complete all of it effectively. And so it was just kind of crunched into this really short time period, so as a result, as I'm looking at trying to move a lot of these spreadsheets forward and building the budget, finding that I have to finish building out these spreadsheets and make sure that I add in check figures along the way to make sure that this never happens again to the best of my ability, because the last thing I want is just to support something that is wrong. And so that's kind of the work that I'm doing right now. And this work, I can tell you, it's challenging and frustrating work, because it's not my OCD self. I want to have everything balanced and tied before I even get used numbers like this. But know that I still have to look and balance and tie exactly where people are at to verify these numbers. These are based upon estimates. And now I have to do the work over the next month and a half to verify these estimates. And so there's going to be fluctuations and changes as we move through this. I think the reason why I wanted to take a moment to explain all that is because it's really important to understand the underlying nature of these numbers and estimates, is what I'm saying when I say it's an estimate, and how I'm trying to get it to an actual number. I mean, we've got a plan to get there, but it's gonna take us a few weeks more to really get this whole thing figured out, through mid-April, I would say. So anyway, so looking at the general fund revenue big picture, looking at the change between budgets of 1 million to the negative, and our governor's proposal to total program funding, it was 2.58 million, and we still don't have any updates exactly where the legislature is going to go, so it still could be plus or minus 600,000 on that. And we'll definitely continue to keep you guys in the loop as we know more. And then it shows the 1.88% increase, $229 per student on the PPOR, no averaging of student count, and that's a huge hit for this particular school district, just because we are declining enrollment, and that's escalating this year. We're looking at 75 student loss for this year in our budget for 25-26. That's a hit, but that's included in here, just to make sure. I'm being clear, that there's only the 10% of the phase-in, there's another estimation that could increase to 18% of the phase-in, which would make sure that we would get to our fully phased-in new formula, what that means, in 5 years. At the 18%, at 10%, it would literally take 10 years, but they've taken some off the top. We're using the 10% number right now because of all the cuts that are being talked about and because of the problems they're having at the state level. We believe that that's the best and most prudent direction right now, but once again, when we find more, we'll let you know.
I think that that's important.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
March 20th.
Yeah.
And I don't know that everybody's updating on that, we can check in on that, but I feel like, when we have opportunities to advocate at the state level, these are important things for us all to understand. I think that 1448 was this big school finance formula. It was supposed to get rid of the budget stabilization factor that the legislature passed last year and said they would roll it out over the next 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
Maybe it is 6, yeah, sorry.
And so that, I think the 18% is more of a 6-year rollout, but what the governor's kind of hedging on now is saying, maybe it's a 10-year rollout. And so if like, that's one of the, I mean, I think our advocacy point that I'm clear on is that, you know, as we start talking to legislators, like, we want 1448 the way it was voted on last year. We want you to roll it out the way you committed to last year, over 6 years. We want that number to go to 18%, which would increase for us. The averaging is another piece that the governor proposed, which definitely hurts us because you'll see it next when we look at the student enrollment impacts. That's another piece that we should be.
He's come back and said no averaging, because if you heard back for a while, like.
maybe
Maybe,
yeah,
here, like,
yeah,
it's
right
years,
now.
but he has come back and said, we're not averaging, we're done.
Yeah.
Not,
Well,
no,
in January's estimate,
Yeah,
the January, and that's the best information we have.
right,
I did get an update. I'm trying to find it right now, so I have it exactly. So give me a second. Oh, okay. The most recent update we have gotten from CEA said that the new proposal would implement the new school funding formula with 4-year averaging, which is what the original legislation called for. The only change from the new school funding formula is that instead of phasing in the new formula over 6 years, they would implement it over 7 years. So this would change
Okay.
next year's implementation from 18% to 10%. So
That was, I think, the State House leader's proposal.
that's, yeah,
Oh,
that's like
McCluskey's
yeah, McCluskey's proposal. It's not voted on yet.
It's now where we'll,
But
yeah.
the legislature's the one that passes it, not the government.
Yeah, so it's the legislature now who's, and like McCluskey and the legislature are gonna do that. But you're right, like, that's still part of this work, and like, we need people to understand that. It is starting to look better, but at the same point, it's like, we can't let up the gas on this one.
Yeah.
what
So
we,
that would be. If I remember right from what I read, that would, they're saying that'll only be like a $34 million shortfall or reduction for.
Yeah,
education.
34 million,
if they want with McCluskey's.
if they went with, yeah. this one.
I think the other thing that I know, Christy, we've talked about, but we haven't quite put in here is the cost of living adjustment,
Yes.
which would also impact us in different ways that our neighbors would be impacted. And what we've heard is that the best next, assessment will be after March 17th. Get the state financial forecast, but we're anticipating that in the next couple of days. I bet probably CEA will do the same thing as like Rural Alliance and Colorado School Finance Project, but after the 17th, we'll get a lot more forecasts, so.
Yeah, but, and I talked to Tracy Rainey and my understanding of that, we used to get through about 30, like a point, or like 0.3 cost of living adjustment factor. Now this would bring it down to a 0.23 maximum. So all of these high cost districts, including ourselves, I mean, are significantly impacted. This is $500,000 of funding loss. Yeah, so this one's big, big, big. Just so you guys know, and we're trying to get to that top third, and how can we do that if our funding formula is not really reflective of us being a high cost of living area? So this one, I have really more time with.
rightfully so.
Yeah. So, yeah, just so you're aware of that too. So yeah, there's just so many, and there's so many iterations, it's really impossible to, until the state runs the numbers, you know, once something is getting close to being passed, it's really hard for us to know the impact for us. But it's just something we're, you know. So then, now the student count numbers, for now it's hitting us, for 2 years. Cause I kind of took that out of the governor's proposal, which is a positive increase, and then took out what our projected Roaring Fork School District reduction and student count was by year, to show those impacts separately. Now, if they were looking at adding that back, we can almost consider that kind of close to, you know, funding that's gonna go away. So it's not quite one-time funding, but it's 2 or 3 year funding. It's just something to consider. But yeah, right now it's not included in there at all. The other thing that, we talked about earlier was the mill levy override was overestimated by, it was 800,000 last year. Now with additional inflation, it's 711,000. So, there's other net reductions of 965,000. It's just this cumulative impact this year with all these different changes was what really hit us hard. And that includes the interest earnings reduction of 633,000 because of our cash flow. That's really a cash flow issue. With moving our fund balance down to the minimum or close to it. Specific ownership tax, that's more of a economic issue. We've been seeing lower specific ownership taxes coming in. So that's estimated at a $250,000 loss right now. And so that's kind of the summary there. Okay. Any questions on the revenue side? Looking at our expenses, and we'll go to the slide 23 because that's what we're working off of right now. The numbers are in total the same, but at least this is what we're working on. 4.6 million in estimated expense increases with the recurring budget misses of 1.7 million. And then 2.8 million in total staff salaries and health insurance. Before we put that 1.5 million separate, just because that was like the minimum we needed just to show that, but I understand why we need to look at this a different way, so we can package it for you guys differently. That's totally fine. And then looking at total recurring loss before cuts was 5.642 million. And we did get to a balanced budget on a one-time basis. You know, we have some non-recurring cuts in there, but based upon this, we did, based upon all of our estimations, which we know I've shown you all the places that it can move. That's the only thing you can do with shifting sand. That we're pretty much there. Like I said, in the next about month and a half, I'm gonna get this really tied in a lot closer.
So the first bullet says estimated expense increases was 4.6. What is just our total budget for the district? Not just the increase, but the overall, like, this is how much we get, this is how much we spend.
I'm gonna tell you what it would be, but these are all based upon estimations because what I've had to do is take our current budget as correct.
Right.
And then add and subtract everything I know that we need to do that was missed or that has been changed. And then look at these calculations separately as how much would a step cost? How much would, you know, health insurance cost and, you know, these budget misses and things like that. And that's how this was devised. So I wasn't able to build it from the bottom up, which is my, you know, better way of doing it, but there's no way to get there from here yet. But having said that, it was roughly 83 million last year. And I'm working off of, do you want exact numbers or is, okay, 83 million was the budget for the general fund for the last year. And then adding the 4.6 million in, so that would be 87.6. I can't remember, there's some change in the 83 million. And then you've got also some transfers as well. We can look those up, but yeah.
87.6 for 25-26.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, you bet.
And at least for Christina, right, for total program fund, we're just taking the student count times that
for people.
Yeah. Is that right? So
That's
we're,
how I'm getting to those reductions. Yeah.
right. And I've run some spreadsheets on that just to make sure everything is correct and valid. Yeah. I can pull the budget and give you a better number. But not, I mean, that'll just be after we're finished here and there's any other questions. Is there any other information you guys would need on that, or was that helpful? Right amount, okay.
So I'm just gonna ask another question. So we have 87.6 is what it basically costs to run our district in the 25-26 school year,
Plus then the transfers out.
plus transfers. What are the transfers?
That would be, well, some of them are pass-throughs, such as the charter school. I mean, so that's why I sighed.
Right, I
Because,
understand.
and then there's things like, food service. The grant fund, we have some grants that the district helps with. And then, let me see, insurance reserve fund. That's a whole nother one that is additional monies that is a transfer out. That's why I was trying to look up the district's budget. Then I'll be able to give you a better, here, hold on a second, I'm pulling it up now.
You're fine. Cause my question is more about, the transfers don't really matter. I understand those are gonna come in and go right out. As soon as you said charter school, I understood that. My question is, out of the 87.6, how do you come to the 2.8 is what is for staff and health and salaries and health insurance? How did that number come to be?
Well, let's go back to your first question, because
Okay.
I have the budget up, and I just wanna make sure that I close the loop. Because school district budgeting, and this is something that I think that would be really helpful to know exactly what information would be useful in educating everybody and everybody being on the same page on our finances. We've been having to try to do everything on the fly this year, which has been challenging, I think, as far as communication, right? So that's just something that I think would be really great. But looking at, where our budget is for 24-25, this is before anything was changed. It was 83.3 million, okay? And then, plus we're saying that there would be 4.6 million on top of that. And then the transfers out are $15.3 million. Okay? Because, and the reason they're $15.3 million is mostly 8.2 million of that is from charter school. Okay? Then there's the tech mill fund is 380,000. Then there's insurance reserve of about 1.6 million, which is all not health insurance. That's not our health insurance. It's liability insurance, workers' compensation, unemployment, all of those kind of things. Then our early childhood education is 1.25 million. So, and then food service was 200,000. For grants, it was 1.3 million. And then we had capital project fund transfers out of 2.5. It's like all of it flows through the general fund. So it's kind of like in a conversation like this, it's better in presentation, but I'm going to try to make sure that I can get it as solid as I can and as understandable as I can. Yeah. But, okay. So the next question was, how did the 2.8 million? Quite frankly, we were trying to get to what we needed to cut to get to a step and what the minimum health insurance, because we were trying to find a way to not cut additional staff beyond anything that we needed, so nobody was going to lose their job. And like trying to mitigate any other additional staff cuts and reductions above what was needed to keep the student teacher ratio the same. And other district office positions that were cut as a part of our first round. And that was
what we thought we were gonna just, I mean, we were just trying to eke out from the cuts. So it wasn't, we don't have the funding, to fund that. We've had to try to cut other areas to get to that number. Does that help? Transparently, that's exactly what we ended up trying to do. It was trying to like balance, like, how are we gonna get here this year with this really tough budget?
Make sure I'm understanding this correctly, the 2.8, that is our projected increased cost of staff salaries and health insurance, so like lane changes, steps, right, that's that 2.8, so that's what we projected, and so it's like, we need to get to that 2.8.
That's what we were trying to do, so we were cut.
So that's why you kind of targeted that number. You said this is what it would
You got
cost.
it,
Let's
Maz.
try to find
Right.
that amount of money.
Yeah, we were like,
Perfect.
let's try to find it, because it's obviously not gonna come in additional monies we just
Right.
talked about, unless something happens with the legislature, which it
A
could.
miracle.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that helps explain a lot, because we just never knew where this number came from.
Okay.
Cause we're trying to look, and it's hard because we're comparing it to this year. Does that, we're
Right.
kind of using this year, which we know in the earlier slides said, well, we knew this year ended up with a $7.7 million deficit. So we had to get back up to neutral there. And then we knew we were gonna anticipate these additional challenges, but you're right, like we could have either said that the target for 25-26 was not 8.2. We could have taken away that 2.8 and said no money for staff salaries and health insurance, but that didn't. We wanted to shoot a little higher and like, if we're gonna, how can we do it? To be honest, that's where we were like, can we get there? And that was definitely those last couple months of trying to go through and look at what was possible internally. And so that's where that came from, was trying frankly to push. Because what we see in the net, it's not really.
So and I think I'm gonna reiterate my question, but I'm gonna say it in a different way, because I do want a different answer. Not that you didn't give me a great answer. How did we get to 2.8 million? As in, did we, like, how do we know that that's actually what it's gonna cost? Like, based on like
Oh, yeah.
teachers going up, like, I assume teachers moving over, we have health insurance costs, but like, was there, what form, did we use the formula we used last year? Did we use the same formula we used 2 years ago? And maybe this is just also something I didn't understand from last year of like, how do we do those projections? And then leading into like, is that what this scattergram information like was part of that tied to this, or I'm curious how we got there,
Yeah.
like mathematically.
So do you know how we got to the 1.5 million? Does that make sense? Like
Tell me
how
which one would,
the 1.5 million for health insurance increase for HDH5? Okay, that one makes sense.
that one makes sense.
Okay, so the 1.3 million is really looking at an average step of roughly 1.82%. And then just increasing the salaries. I mean, it was a very high level, simple calculation.
Okay,
To try to get there,
so it could potentially be more.
it could be more or less, yeah. I mean, because you're gonna have some attrition.
Right. And we're
I
gonna
mean,
have
and so I
lane
tried not
changes,
to hit it too high,
but
but I
not too
mean,
low.
yeah, not too low.
Okay.
But didn't have, I mean, like, looking at the budgets that we have been used, because I didn't know how much I could trust them, first of all. I didn't have a system where I could look through and add everything up to be able to get to a full budget.
Okay,
So I had to do these high level estimations and then try to, do the deep work over the next month and a half, which, because first I had to finish the audit, then, the quarterlies and
right,
then
totally.
the supplemental, and now I'm on like, okay, building budgets, and then I built the school budgets, and now I'm like, okay, and then I'm gonna meet with
Totally.
schools and get the
That's,
other
yeah.
ones, and so that's just
Totally get
how it. Yeah, I mean,
I
I
just,
don't know. if
I
that-
think that big picture, I think that's just a good point that we need to keep in mind is like, when we go look at the scattergram of like, that number could be different.
it could
Like if
be-
we're looking, it could be more and it could be less.
That's what we're looking, I mean, and that's the problem with this whole budget is because, I'm not having to build systems from the bottom up in some cases.
Right.
So that I can actually have a better look at the budget to make sure that everything, and until that system is built, as I'm like building the airplane while it's in the air. Things are gonna shift up plus and minus. I mean, I'm a statistic person, so statistically speaking, that we're gonna be within a range of reasonableness when it hits the bottom, bottom line, but we're not gonna hit it exactly because there's no way to do that when you're doing running estimations.
So I understand for this year's budget, you guys said this is our goal. We want to get everybody stopped. We want to get some health insurance. You've worked in school districts that have been healthier than you currently are financially. How would you come up in a healthier school district with a staff? Like, how would you say this is how much staff gets for salary and benefits in a healthy school district?
I would say, and I'm gonna say, in a school district that we had, the same processes year after year, defining healthy, right? We already had those built processes. I mean, we had so many things that changed this year from the change of the school finance funding formula, everything, was kind of shifting in our feet, so I understand that. What I did at RE2 is that I would look and build the entire revenue budget, which is similar to what I did with this budget. Then I would say, okay, pluses and minuses, this is how much money that we have for the entire budget for the general fund. Here, okay, then I would look at like, okay, food service, I would look at, some things over here, health insurance, all of these kind of things. What is happening with para? Are we gonna have to do the 0.5% increase or not? How is that gonna run? And impact our budget. So then I would pull all those kind of numbers together in transparency and put it on one sheet. It would all be in one sheet. And then I would have, okay, this is how much money is available, for raises, all of that staffing, that kind of thing. Then we would take the staffing off the top and say, we need these positions. Okay, then we have the bottom line budget of, okay, we have $1 million for all additional health insurance, and salaries for the actual schedule, and that would include your, cost of living increase and maybe not necessarily your lanes, because that tends to equal out over time a little bit, but maybe a little bit for that. And then that would be the start for negotiations. And we had, at RE2 it was a little different. We had, the IBB that was all combined, and the certified classified admin all kind of in one room. So we would all have that. So I don't know how that structure looks for this organization, but that's how we did it. And I would go through with them, and some years there was a lot of frustration because there was less money or something was going on. I would go through line by line by line, make sure on the revenue, make sure that everybody understood the reason for the projections. So, because, and if somebody needed to push a projection or ask questions, that's fine. Ultimately, the projections of the work of the board and superintendent, but I mean, I don't mind looking at things and saying, hey, can we push something different here or there? That's okay. But that was what built the trust over time, is that level of review. We didn't do the scattergram as much, but I understand that why you want to do that and how you calculate your comparative and competitive salaries here. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
So do I understand it correctly that the part that's for salaries, that's with your estimation, not looking at the scattergram, that we're pretty close on that. Like, we know how much that is gonna be. Because we're all where we are on the salary schedule.
That's right.
We move
That's
over
right.
one, the
Yeah.
math works.
Yeah.
And the insurance is sort of where we are now. Like, now that's the variable. And so,
Well, I would back up and say, that's the, I feel like the corner that we kind of backed everybody into by saying COLA.
and the
And we made the assumption on the slide before that the COLA made sense. Does that make sense? Because there's a world in which you could take 1.7 of a 61% certified and say, you know what? We feel like the comps are fine, hold that. We'd rather stay with the 7 than allocate funding, right? Like, be able to make that decision. Or to say, we would rather, short, stick with a cheap HDHP and try to push on moving a salary schedule for a lane or step or general part of the salary schedule that's not as competitive. And we didn't allow that process, which is what this team is supposed to work. And so I would just check that and say, that's kind of the unfair position in the way we rolled this out, that I'll own. Because we were running numbers that was too far, a step too far, and needed to look like this. So that folks could all step back and go, okay, we've got this money to play with, what are our options, what's the most important to people, what does that look like of looking at a cost of living or a lane versus this cost of health insurance that we're grappling with. And that needs to be the decision of these salary teams, not to come out and say, oh, we've already allocated this much to polls, everybody's got that now figured out, because there might be trade-offs that feel more
Right.
appropriate for an employee group.
And that was the survey, the short survey you sent out, which is your priority, right? The salary.
That was what I was saying.
Oh, sorry, what we sent out. But I think the survey you sent out was where else, what's the unturned stone? So if we have found unturned stones, that 2.8 million can increase, is that my understanding of that?
Potentially, yep. It depends if we're putting savings, what's interesting, there was some savings recommendations, and I can also give an update on where we are with all that. There were savings recommendations, and I can't think of an example right now that were great. But the funding stream was tight, so it wasn't money going to a general fund, it was like a grant funded, it's like, yeah, that would have savings, but we couldn't use it over here in health insurance. Because it would only reduce that. It's restricted dollars, does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
earmarked.
so not all of it's a one-to-one, but that was part of the hope, was like, can we scratch more out here? And I also think that, like, as we saw on the slide before, if that revenue world changes, and I do think at that point, we're gonna have to weigh, lots of things, like, I'm only saying this, Jason, who just walked in. Middle school athletic coaches have felt really, like that their salary schedule is not right. We have a fund balance that we know we gotta build back. We need to keep moving our staff salaries, so if it ends up better, if we're gonna have some interesting conversations about, okay, where does this go? And I think that was why initially, when we thought of the health insurance, when we were coming to the health insurance group, we were kind of thinking like, could we have three options? One is like worst case, one is like, if there's an extra $250,000, if there's an extra $500,000, that we would have direction from that committee to go, this is what we want if it gets better. This is what we want if it gets better. So that we wouldn't have to kind of circle back as March 17th forecast comes out, legislature does their work. If they go, if we go more with McCluskey's side of that 18%, yeah, that's gonna dramatically shift. And if we knew, here's the next best thing to spend that money on, that would be helpful, but it's not, that would be a great problem for us to have in April. It's like, oh, wow, we're looking better than we thought we would. Where do we put this?
And then also revisiting 26, 27 on those one-time costs that we cut, because we're gonna have 2 years that we're gonna have to potentially fix. Just so that we're aware looking forward, is we could put those things in the salary schedule now, but then we've already cut those things so that they're not options on the table for next year. So it's like, it's this balance of that also.
And I would name, because it's on our list, right, as this team defines competitive, that is really important, because if we can define competitive and we do the analysis and we identify that, hey, as a whole, our teachers we're 4% off the competitive. Or we identify like, no, you know what, the beginning BA up to BA 20 is competitive, but MA 40 is not, right? And we say, in our if this group can identify, we have a shared understanding of competitive, and this group is not hitting it, and we end up with extra money, then we know where that needs to go. And frankly, in the same way, and they're not there yet because we need to build the system, but what Classified is proposing is this system of analyze, they just have so many employee groups. that they would be keeping track of who is not competitive, and when there is money to infuse in the system, they prioritize based on that list. They're recognizing that like, okay, if we analyzed comps this year and we found out that bus drivers now were way behind RAFTA and SKICO, there's no money, but if there is next year, or there's additional grade just to that group, because we've defined competitive. And so I do think that that guidance would, you know, if there's additional money in April or May, that helps if we know as a team and we said, we're off the mark, like, okay, we get it. We're doing what we can.
So with you saying like, in the great magical world, there's extra money. What formula is there to say out of $1 million extra, where it goes? Like, is that you and Christie and the board sitting down and saying, this is how we split it up? Is it like, because clearly we have lots of places it could possibly go. So how is that gonna be decided? Who makes that? Is there a formula? Is there a priority list? Like, how does that happen?
And we're literally talking about it today, going, how does this happen? Like, we're starting to keep that list. But I think it's a really good question.
And my second question is, you brought up the insurance committee. If we're saying now that we kind of went too far to start with, and we as this committee needs to talk about the 1.7 and how that gets distributed among certified, does that mean we're pulling certified out of the insurance conversation and we're having it in here with this group? Or is this group having the conversation of this is where the priorities are, and then the insurance reps are going back to that group? Certified saying, this is where we're living. What vision are you seeing for that? Okay.
I think, Stephanie, I think that's one that we really need to figure out as a team, because, right, the contract requires that our negotiating team identifies a crew that's gonna work on health insurance every year, and in partnership with admin and classified IBB, make a recommendation to the board. How we do it with this kind of practice of dividing it up, because you're right, like, there's a world in which this crew makes a decision to say 1.7, hypothetically, 1.7 to PPO8, and holding that for everybody. And I think we know, well, those who've been in health insurance know, because classified's been pretty clear from the get-go, job security, salaries, insurance is like secondary. I mean, I think they might even say, be honest, like, make people pay for an HDHP5. I don't know if they'd go that far, but you know, we could be far off, and I don't know where we go then.
And that's one of the reasons why we had that 1.5 million, because we have to have the same plan we offer to everybody. We can't have certified at this plan and classified at this plan, you know, admin at this plan. It has to be district wide, unfortunately. So that is the challenge. I mean, I think that there's a lot of work to be done with the changes, you know, with the declining enrollment district, with the changes to the funding formula, with the changes, you know, for all of these different formulas that have been used in the past that are now broken and don't necessarily work. I think it's a big conversation that we at some point really need to ground ourselves on, come back to.
Yeah, I think Maslow would have something to contribute about differences of opinions in terms of classified says, I need more money, versus us saying, we want better insurance. And I agree, it's really tough to try to tell someone, oh no, what you really need is insurance. Who am I to tell someone else what they need in their life? So I get the difficulty of the decisions that we're trying to make in here. I do.
Somebody help me understand, I'm not really understanding the idea of insurance and money towards salary. Where, like, I understand there are two different pots, and if like 1.5 is the minimum amount for the.
But we're saying that they were divided into two pots for us, and that was Anna whose own, that was overstepping it.
Right, but here's my question that I'm not understanding is like, if 1.5 is like the minimum insurance. And like, insurance could be, you could spend more on insurance. If those are able to be spent individually by the person and is like given the money as the raise, why? I'm not understanding like So if 1.5 goes to insurance, if that were the case, and people wanted better insurance, and then they can pay for better insurance out of the raise that they would get, why would you not just start with the lower insurance amount, and then people can pay towards their better insurance versus saying everybody has to have the better insurance if it's all that same pot of money? And that's the part I guess, I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself well.
I understand what you're saying. If people have different desires, then give them the money and let them pick the plan they want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I'm not understanding why, if it's all that same pot of money, and why that wouldn't be like the,
I think we disagree about how big the pot of money is.
that I can understand.
And I think we looked at some numbers in the insurance committee where if you actually give us the money and we have to pay for more, somehow it ends up our paycheck is less than this year. And I don't know, Megan had those numbers, I don't have them right now, but it started being real wonky and how it affected para and things like that. So the taxes, those things, yeah, all that kind of stuff. So we actually ended up with a lesser paycheck for lesser insurance. And so that did not, that doesn't sell real well.
And I wonder if there would be a cost differential. Would it cost the district less overall to offer everyone this plan than say, give everyone this plan, but if they want to pay up, it might actually cost them this much out of their pocket. So it might cost more for someone to buy that next level individually, because
whole
fewer
district
people are in
is-
that pool.
And my understanding too, and I think what has crystallized a little bit more, Henny, was that and exactly what you named was the assumption that we made. But I think that there's more nuance to it, and hence the need for
Right, and I was just curious of what that
running the
nuance
numbers,
is, because
running
I
the
don't.
scenarios, really trying to look at and grapple with where are folks, what frankly, I think some of the questions like, right, that we've heard is like, what's the usage rate, who's on what plans, where's that impact gonna hit, where's the bulk of our employees, what salary point are they at? Just, I think, to maybe pressure test that. And I do think that, it's a different. And this is maybe more than the nuanced health insurance question, but when we were weighing HD, HP5 with PPO 8 and the costs and the options, like they're vastly different plans and different costs. And I do think 09 is a compelling consideration because it is not as expensive, but it still gets some of the things that even matter to people about the group clinic, different benefits. But I don't know, I don't know if that helps, but it's a different consideration when you have that plan.
Well, it's less money we have to try to come up with.
And allocate and still get the.
And at the risk again of making decisions for other people, which, I mean, we're kind of put in that position, that's what we're doing, right? I just feel like everyone has a base plan, should have something where they don't have to say, I can't afford to go to the doctor because it's entirely out of pocket. You know what I'm saying? I mean, someone might say, yeah, I need that cash, but then they don't go to the doctor when they should or when they really need to. And I know that's a bigger issue. That's a problem of American society. And our insurance system is flawed. We're not gonna fix that problem in here.
Maybe next year.
But I just feel very strongly that everyone should have a plan where they can go to see a doctor without a prohibitive additional out-of-pocket cost.
Well, and one of the charges we've always had was not only retention, but recruitment. And so I'm thinking of getting new staff in, if insurance is something that they're paying completely out of pocket. Now they're trying to move to a highly expensive area and they're paying $8 for eggs, like, is this gonna be where they choose to come? So I think that's always a part of it too. And I'm gonna push back a little bit on certified, and I really can't wait to talk to them much because I feel like in this budget crisis, they are afraid of losing their jobs, 100%. I've heard that 100 times. But when we talk about it, then they also talk about some of their employees who currently get $20 a month and they're okay with only making $20 a month because they have a good insurance. So I kind of hear both of them from them. But I think their overarching fear and some of the things I've heard from certified staff in my building is I'll be the first one cut because I don't have a degree. So I wonder if, and having some questions with them as well as, like, this plan doesn't mean we're firing all certified staff. Like, I feel like those words have never been said to them. I don't think that we've articulated that well. And so I feel like they're in this survival mode. And I hear, you know, our representatives over and over again say, so many people take this job just for the insurance. And when they see that you have to pay to even go to the free clinic, it's a scary thing.
I think that's a really good point, Stephanie, that like, if we're hearing from classified job security is number one, and we've been trying to say, hey, we've made a lot of cuts to say, well, we think we are not having to do more layoffs, we're not having to do more reductions in force, we are adjusting based on student enrollment, absolutely. In departments, I would say mostly central office, operational departments where there's attrition, we are absolutely pausing on rehires until we've assessed and thoroughly looked at those plans, but so not that job security is totally off the table, but like, if we've solved for that, could we now look at the nexus and consider those pieces? Because I think that's a really fair point.
And can you also answer your question? If we go with a lesser plan, and we give people the money to pay for the upper plan, it's also not, solving the cost of prescription care that has gone up because of the new insurance debacle. So that was also a big thing of like, I'll speak from experience. I'm paying an additional $1,000 a month in prescriptions right now that I wasn't planning on the, Lisa, thank you. I try not to think of that word anymore. That plan. And so it also just, people are saying like, I gotta pay more for my insurance and I'm paying more for my prescription and my paycheck is just becoming less and less and less than where I'm even sitting right at this moment. So.
Have we had conversations with insurance providers, CVT, to say like, what is the cost of these different plans if everybody's on it versus some of them?
Unfortunately for the proposal for 25-26, there's no benefit for us to say everybody has to be on a plan to get a reduced cost.
So it's the same price depending on how many people are in each of the
25-26,
different
yeah.
plans.
Yep, but could be different moving forward, like.
Right, but at least for this year,
For
now,
this year.
that's the case.
Yeah, there's not like a bulk.
It's actually a higher cost if we were to do that, because right now, I mean, we're not paying out anything to people if they don't take the plan. So that we're actually saving that money and it's already been baked in to the current budget.
Which is a whole different issue.
Okay.
Which is a whole different issue.
Yeah.
People that choose not to take insurance are making effectively less than people that are.
Right.
That's a loss of benefit for people that say, I'm on my spouse's insurance, whatever. That's a conversation for maybe a different year, but.
Cause I think that's been kicked around, right? The like, an incentive.
Well, it's been kicked back at us. It's been kicked around, we've proposed and it's been kicked back.
Gotcha.
The looking about, as we're building out the budget, as I'm doing this detailed work, to see how many people are not on, we're not paying for, and making sure that that is, you know, like how that's budgeted, and I'll have to look into that a little bit.
And anyone that's on their spouse's insurance that's approaching retirement, it makes sense for them to say, I want the insurance. Even if they're still on their spouse's insurance, and basically effectively costing the district money that they're not using. Because it pays towards their retirement benefits. Long term, I think counts as part of their salary. Counts their 3-year average of their highest salary. If you, that's the way I understand it, am I mistaken?
Oh, that's good.
No, you're right, and that changed in 2019, so new hires since then, but whoever is now nearing retirement, it's still receiving that benefit allowance.
Okay, can I try to say this back to you? So if given, let's say I don't need district health insurance at all. But I should take it because it ups my highest average salary.
That's what I understand.
For those who were hired prior to 2019,
Okay,
yes,
but for not the
We-
new folks.
not new, yes.
But you would have to be paying income tax on it.
That's fine.
Yes.
I'm just saying, that's the
I'll
only,
pay income tax.
that's the
every
only
5
point
years.
on that. Mhm.
And do,
So what happens with the new folks that after 2019?
The district does not give them a benefit allowance on top of your salary, but we don't charge you for your insurance.
So just, it looks
It's a wash
different
it.
on their paychecks.
It looks
Yeah.
different on their paychecks. Everyone hired prior to 2019
Complicated and messy.
receives receives on the top, and we charge you that.
So we already do have multiple systems, like when we're talking about, we can't have different classified and certified and admin systems.
Well, the insurance is the same, but the way that.
The insurance is the same, the way it's charged into people's paychecks, and that happened actually because that benefit allowance was adding up to Para's, salary, so we got a slap in the wrist in 2019, and that's why we changed it. However, not to affect those that were already receiving it, those were grandfathered, but anyone hired after that date, they see it under check differently.
And is that a district thing or a state thing?
I think it was a district thing, we were doing the benefit allowance on top, and Para told us that we should not be doing that, and we switched that.
So it was kind of an agreement with Para, is my understanding,
Aside
from the district.
Yeah.
With the district.
many people do not see the charge. They don't receive the money.
But if the district were willing to pay some of that money to employees, those employees might not say, well, I'm gonna go on your insurance even though I don't need it. You, in the long run, you'd save money in that.
and that would be like almost not the complete model, but we've seen it where like employers just say, here's the allowance, you do what you wanna do. You can either pocket it, you can put it in HSA, you can go back, but we're talking about something maybe threatening a little bit.
Which also threads in with high deductible plan and that for a while. Magoni knows this was my gripe for a while. For a while, we gave employees on the high deductible plan back that $45 and how much cheaper it was than the allowance. And then we stopped doing that, and I was very upset. And now we part of it, because you want to incentivize people to be on the insurance but not use it. Being on a high deductible plan helps our overall usage go down.
Because they can then put that 45 into an HSA.
So that's
Right.
how I was looking on the high deductible plan and how to put it better.
And that is a topic, right, that health insurance talked a little bit about, is a world in which we were doing more around like an HSA, because it does have that cool added secondary retirement benefit if you don't use it. I think that's round 2 of health insurance.
Yeah, I think we're getting
But
way far
I,
ahead of
I
ourselves.
do think there's a lot of ways to look at it, and there is, like, we are definitely working with Aspen to parachute soups. We've got a bunch of meetings with CEMT. We're starting to meet with some local providers and try to see if there's other things we can do. CEMT is listening to us, or we might just see some different kinds of options in 26 from 7.
Yeah, and additionally, if I look at the budget and I do all this deep dive work and then we find funding somewhere, I mean, we'll also make that known. I mean, this is just based upon estimations, which is really frustrating. So, but we'll have some more information there.
I do think, to your point, Stephanie, and it's been clarifying, because we were talking about that list of all the things that if there was extra money, what would we pay for? I do think that walking out of this work with clarity on what competitive means, and knowing if we're not hitting our target, where that is, and making that abundantly clear, shifts priorities. I do think that that's powerful for this team to identify. I think that really matters. I think that we have and I go back to that interest. Do we have a sense of what that means for competitive? And we acknowledge, okay, this is a hard year to get there, but man, if we can get there, this is where we need to go first. and it's this much, or it's this component, and I think that's helpful. Especially if we get to that spot where it may be nice to get to, but.
So maybe moving us forward a little bit, is there a chance for us to see the list of things that were cut and therefore I'm guessing also the list of things that are priorities to be money reallocated to those?
The cut list is the January 29th supplemental budget. Those are the things that we, cut from the budget. I mean, that is the list, and then what I'm doing is, I'm using that list and generating the 25-26 budget, and I'm taking those monies out before I even give it to people. So I'm really looking at that, and that's for 24-25. Then it says if it's recurring or not into the next year, and that's why we put that recurring yes or no on there. So that there was that clarity of how that's going to impact the budget until next year.
Even the 25. Some of it's on there. One of the things that I heard today. Never mind. Can I just talk for a minute about the like staff savings document? So, right, that Google form went out. What ideas do you have? Kind of a stop doing things list. My plan is, I've started to pull together, we got over 100 responses, which is pulling together a summary of that, and it's gonna look like two deliverables. One is gonna be a pretty extensive analysis of those recommendations. And the way they're all grouped by kind of ideas, and recommendations, and then there's a column that's kind of current state. What's the current state of that department, that funding stream? Where is the money coming from? What has there been work done already? Have we already cut that? Some programming or allocations there. And then there's a column of like, where do we go from here on those recommendations? And so one of the things, and this will come out in next Tuesday's email for me, is that analysis. And then I'll do like a slide deck of kind of high level and probably just a video. Like both. And so that will really talk, and frankly, a lot of this is like, a lot of the recommendations were things that you can imagine, it's like, that's bound by the CDC. So there's nothing we can do to that. And so what it would say is like a recommendation, let's say of which was a recommendation of adjust staffing ratios, teacher student staffing ratios. And it names that, and actually that one's not bound by the CDC, but all of our school-based staffing ratios are based on historic agreements and understandings and ratios that have been established through IBB, through work with administration. And to adjust any of those is gonna require the involvement of certified admin IBB for school-based staffing ratios. And we're absolutely gonna have to talk about that in the next couple of years of 29-to-1 CLDE, 18.35 to 1 for gen ed teachers, all of those things. I'm trying to think of, like reducing PTO days to save money, which I'm not quite sure that would save money, but it came up. And it was very clear that like current state of that is that's bound by the CDC. So any adjustments that has to go through the certified IBB process. So that's how some of this analysis will go. One of the things that I've heard is that this list, especially of like, when we talk about say the district office and ops teams positions that have been reduced, this is not clear enough, and so I will detail in that update, like exactly what positions have we not required or, decided to not staff through attrition. And so I'll have that list for folks that's more detailed, that's not as vague as restructuring in early childhood special education, that I can actually say that through the restructuring, we're down about two FTEs, we're staffing people differently, and it's creating these savings. So that'll be a lot clearer. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it would just be nice to have that more
To see it.
bulleted.
Yep.
And I don't know if you have access to it easier than I can seem to find the January, that you just mentioned, and link it in here.
Yeah,
That would
we'll
be
make this one bigger.
Look for documents from.
Like,
Which
I'm
one?
not a link. Well, you just go into like the board box, but
I
they're
have it
probably,
as a document,
okay, that 5-page line
it's
item,
not coming up when I clicked on it.
there's gotta be a way just to.
Can you download it?
I know, that's what I'm,
You wanna to paste the link to the board document? If it's. This one?
I got it. Don't go there.
Don't go there.
Same thing on that cursor, do that. And get you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got, and that's 24-25. But as Christy said, a lot of these are similar to the 25-26 reduction, like it's a lot, anything that's recurring is gonna be a reduction that moves forward. And I mean, we could also continue to talk through that tonight, we could do it tomorrow, we could. Still might be helpful to orient to the scattergram, so folks have to look at that tonight before we're done. And again, and I think we would really appreciate it to make sure that's the right info, in case it's not, so we know what we need to do. Something like that.
I think if you go back up and on out, I think,
Oh, that's right, she just made a tab. She said, right, she just made a tab on an existing.
okay, yeah. And then if you go to the bottom, it says district comparison being updated in parentheses. I think that's where she's working.
That's where she's working.
District comparisons being updated is where.
Okay, yeah. got it. Yeah, I'm trying to play around with the scattergram, so it is not ready. But district comparisons being used, updated, that's what Megan's been working on, that tab. And we're looking pretty good. We are matched with Summit. We're above Aspen, Mesa, Durango for starting salary. We're a little bit behind Summit for BA maximum. but we're ahead of everyone else of like these couple starting ones,
Where are we seeing this?
If you go to the notes, go up to the table, or go above the table where it says salary, sandbox 24-25, and click there. Way at the top of the minutes. If you can find
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
um. So, I mean, like our direct comparables, and then we've also compared Megan, I should say, Megan also compared to like similar size districts and then like big districts on the Front Range. And I mean, like our current salaries are looking really awesome. I think a lot of that was from last year. I think the big thing that we need to look at is, and I'm trying to find it, where did you put it on here? Is there's a ranking of like cost of living and where we're ranked, average salaries in those cost of living places. I think that's what all of this is down here. I think that's where Megan put it. If you
Line
can see.
15, row 15.
Yeah, starting at row 15 down. So this year we're ranked 7. Aspen is ranked number 1, Summit's number 2. So we did actually drop down, but we still have like a high cost of living factor. And then the cost of living, they also had like, what is the average salary? Cost of living salary for that community. So our average salary, not including charters, is 69,000, which is a little bit above our cost of living for 2023 estimation. Yeah. It's kind of where we're at comparatively. So I think, what I take out of this, and then Anna, go ahead,
Yeah, no.
ask a question, is we're looking okay. Like, we're hitting that top 3 mark. I think we really bumped ourselves up big last year. And really got ahead of a lot of these districts and keeping us in the top 3rd. To me, it feels like we might have some like room to say, okay, maybe we like, we're hitting it. We don't necessarily need to put more money into our salary schedule to keep that goal. Cost of living. Not feeling like I'm feeling inflation, but I like looking at the numbers. Are we looking at that? Maybe not. Maybe I need to get less expensive habits. I need hobbies.
I think that helps, because I think we're also trying to hold the space of what do people think for health insurance. We did start, it's not, it needs a lot of work, but you can see on, I linked that in there, the health benefits district comps. And some of this is published online, and I wonder even if there's a way that when we start running these comps, we can start looking at stuff like this. Like, I think it's interesting, Summit, just to get any coverage, you have a baseline investment. Same with Garfield already too. Oh, sweet, there's more. There's more. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very cool things to do.
I got it.
That's right, I mean, this is all really helpful in that, like, are we competitive, and what does that mean? Are we hitting that?
Does PPO 8 in Garfield mean the same thing as PPO 8 means here?
or is it a difference? Oh, it does, because they're on
It
CBT.
does,
Yeah, and so the benefit and the way it works means the same, but the cost is different. Based on our
Others have
usage.
something
And
fixed.
that stuff, yeah, it is really strange, but again, look at their hospitals that they're centered on and the cost versus us. And I would mean that even some of these, like, do we have that? So they're right there, they're quoting their benefits 24-25, which is what I'm sure this is supposed to, 25-26, and they're seeing 22% increase on Aspen. You know. Somehow our CEBT jumped from January to June of where we are right now to 25-26 and 10%. Seems suddenly like,
Not a deal.
Oh, wait.
what a deal.
Yeah.
I know, hardly a deal, but at least it's not 22%.
So Aspen has a plan called Surest. What is that?
Fairfield are too, is it too? It sure is 7.
Sure.
It's like better
And
than
it's,
people wanted
it's
it.
made by CBT as well. They're
You can
both-
see the benefits guide.
I'm looking it up right now,
Yep.
of the benefits guide.
And maybe that's more health insurance group, but isn't that 25?
You know, just looking at this too, it's just really interesting, this, cost of living factor. For the IBB salary schedule comparison on the district comparisons tab. We're at a 1.31, which is what we were talking about. And Aspen's at a 1.65. If they're moved to a maximum of 1.23, what's that gonna do for them? That's, I mean, that's just crazy. It just really equalizes all these districts.
Yeah.
I mean, then we would be similar to RE two as far as the cost of living.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's like what I feel strongly about advocating for.
And Junction,
Yeah.
British Junction up a lot.
That just doesn't seem right to me.
I wonder, like, are we at the place where we are with these salary comps by accident? Like, would we be, probably wouldn't be there yet, right?
We're there because of the mill levy. I think
No.
that and last year.
I'm thinking about
I
like
hear what you're saying.
mistakes that were made in our budget, like what,
Right.
Christie's saying, like, we weren't making this decision last year with correct numbers. And so I think it's great that we're here, obviously, but I think it's just interesting to maybe think about it that way. And I think teachers, it sort of set a precedent the past couple of years. Not that obviously, like, we have to keep on with a precedent that was incorrect. But I'm not exactly sure, like, there's just something in my mind that's just kind of like, we had been operating with a correct budget. Where would we be? I don't know. Somebody
Yeah,
else
I get what
finish
you're
my
saying.
thought.
You're saying, Claire, I'm with you.
Part of those salary increases for the last 2 years, which were our biggest percentage ones in.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Was partially due to the fact that we didn't increase insurance because we self-insured. And if
Which
we
is
hadn't
part of it.
self-insured, we would have been paying more money to insurance, and so we had more money to
Right.
invest into salaries.
Well, so we thought.
Right.
So we, but we
Yeah.
did.
But and so we're here now.
Right, so we're here now and we can't keep going
We cannot keep.
at the rate that we were, although I think that's where, when I'm thinking about people that are coming to me and talking to me, people are still very much in the place of. And this meeting helps, like, this is going to help explain it, but people are still very much in the place of trying to. Accept. That we got these big raises the last 2 years kind of on accident. I mean, really, it's what we're saying, like, it was poor management,
I do think we need to do some education around it.
yeah, of money.
And be like, hey, these past 2 years, don't expect that. Like that, those were out of the norm in terms of like how much we should have been getting additional raises.
Yeah, yeah, and I
We need
think
a
that
level of
people
expectation.
felt that have been in the district for a long time too, also were like, finally, we're in like this really healthy place, money wise. And it wasn't true.
I feel like last year, and maybe I misread in the room last year, when that was announced, the raises, that most of the people in this room were kind of like, oh,
Okay.
and there was no kickback at any point. Everyone was like, okay, this sounds great. Like, this is something to like put our flagpole in the ground and be like, look at us now. And I think we're now all of a sudden like, oops, like we were puffing our chests out and now we're like, hey, we gotta like sink back just a little.
So would we rather be in a place where we're having a conversation in this room right now about not yet being, like, if we have been operating off correct numbers, would we yet be as comparable? Probably not, I'm thinking. And so it's in that education piece, it's thinking about, you have to look at it both ways, like, we could be in the situation where we're still saying we want to be comparable. We want to be in that top percentage.
And Kenny, I'm not gonna say that your point isn't valid, but that's still not justifying us taking a substantial step back in coverage.
I'm not saying it is, and I'm not trying to at all equate that.
Because, you know, yeah, okay, and that's fair, but I just wanna be clear that the insurance plans we're looking at, that's a real hit,
And I'm not saying that at all.
you know, and I've said this before, and when I was making $6.92 an hour in the factory, I had better insurance than I have now.
If there's a lot of need for, and I understand that you guys do that, communication staff about that, that there's a lot of need for all these kind of talking points, and that part of it is too, is looking at some of these unknowns into the future that we may need to revisit this a couple times this year, potentially. If something happens differently at the state level or at the federal level, or, you know, that this is gonna be a little bit of a continuation story, and this is where we're at right now. based
Are you
upon
saying
all-
comparatively?
Is that,
Are you talking comparatively? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but I also think like, even with the changes, I think we're still gonna be competitive. Like, we're still gonna be out there. If other districts change, like, we're kind of out where we're at right now.
I was just at that front range last Saturday. For a rural district where most districts work 4 days. And their starting salary is still somewhere around the 40 some. When I mean, oh, our starting salary is 54, and it's like full sparkle. And I'm talking entry level, just coming right out of
Totally.
college, step 1.
4 days versus 5 days, aren't you still working the same hours effectively? You have to meet the same hours.
yes, that's true.
So to say, oh, we should take a pay cut because we're going to 4 days, and I know we're not.
I'm not offering that, no, I'm not
But
offering
to
that.
say to
That's what I'm
compare
saying.
what we're doing to someone that's on 4 days, the salary should still be equitable because you're still working the same, roughly the same hours to meet state guidelines.
Sure,
Right.
So,
yes. And no
Those
matter
other
what,
districts are
people
still-
might see Garfield right next door and also just see those salaries. And they make a difference right away, sorry.
And Nina, when you're looking at that comparison, or when we're looking at that comparison and it's showing 69,000 for Roaring Fork. When we then do the comparison, if we were to do it for 24-25, we had a big jump that year.
Right, well, that's the, yeah,
That's that one.
that's
Right. That's the what?
69.
I thought it's the 74 one. That's below it, which is the new Roaring Fork, and that's for the 24-25 year. Which had that big increase for salaries too.
I don't
So I
see the
think when you
74.
redo this, because this is saying 23,
He's looking on the
24
rank.
average, the rank.
Oh. Oh,
And so when we, then if we were to
Oh.
redo this again for 24-25, we would look probably better. As 24-25 than we're looking at 23-24. Because that was a very big jump that year.
And I appreciate that Megan is doing cost of living, because I think part of being competitive is telling teachers, you're gonna live where you teach.
Exactly.
And I'm living down the valley and living in a trailer. After 25 years in the district, so.
We're thinking, Heather, about what you said, and I agree. And I also feel like if we can get to the other side of this, and we can find a way, I think, Miles, to your point, like, if there's a way to like find a way to get to at least like PPO 9, we can get to the other side of this, feel like I wouldn't have wanted it a different way. Like, I'm not saying that right now. We get to the other side of it. But I feel like this has forced us to have some really hard conversations, and it's not over. Like, it's not over. I mean, the interrogation of our staffing levels and our sizes, like, right, it's the perpetual concern when you have a school district of the size of the deal. That is always an issue, right? But the issues that we have facing us this year have really leveled that up to a level of intensity that we need to attend to. And it, you know, what you'll hear in the staff savings recommendations is like, you know, I think we're okay enough not to have to attend to it in the next 2 months and do a reduction in force. But do we need to talk about it and really have some plans in the next? Yes, absolutely. And we need to look at all of these things that we've just rolled forward and assumed that we're getting impact for, and that we're assuming we're getting the right outcomes for. And we need to start tying metrics to different scopes of work that we've created for ourselves. And so that we can say at the end of the strategic plan, all right, we went all in on this thing. Did it work? And if not, then we need to stop doing it. And I don't think that we've really thoughtfully interrogated and assigned outcomes to the work we're doing in a way that I feel like this has pushed us to do. I also think that, you know, for those folks who've been on health insurance teams in the past, we know that like education for employees and employees' choices makes a big difference. And we also know that like people are kind of like, do we really want to learn that? I actually think that our motivation might increase, and people might go, okay, wait, tell me more what it might save me to do Surgery Plus. I mean, I know I love this guy who is right here in the valley, and I teach their kid, but tell me what might happen if I traveled for that. I think if we can get through this, it's forcing us, and like, this is I'm looking at Megan's spreadsheet, like, that's a relief, like, yeah, we should be pushing this. Our community supports us. We have a strong melody, like, yeah, yes, and so I guess I totally hear you, but I also like, I don't wanna, I think we could be better off. And if we can get to the other side.
Meaner and meaner,
What's that?
meaner and meaner.
Yes, exactly. Like, we ought to be able to know where all the dollars are. And I don't think that despite how cool the spreadsheets have been in the past, like, they're not accurate. They weren't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Were they?
Spreadsheet.
they were super cool. I mean, they were great.
They're fun to play with.
But I think that like, we're all gonna get better at this. Like, yes, I'm so glad Christy's leading this work, and it is tedious, and guess what, it's not her, it's us, like, we have to carry, we all have to understand it, we have to be able to look at that budget the board gets and get it. And I think we're gonna, I don't know, I think we could get to the other side of this and be meaner and meaner, and say, yeah, we expect to be there, and we're gonna keep pushing, and we're gonna keep pushing for everybody, we're gonna keep moving housing, and we're gonna keep, you know, working on student outcomes, and we're really gonna nail the student achievement, because we know we're not there yet. And we're gonna keep being willing to have hard conversations with care and concern for each other, and,
And I just think that too, with all the changing and shifting sand that's happened this year, underneath my feet, it's just really gonna be great to take a breath after this is done. And then look at where we're at and how we wanna operate in the future, given all these new scenarios and situations of, like, with the funding formula, for example, and what we're gonna look to do and what is needed as far as what information is needed to make good decisions. From the certified, from the classified staff, just to have that clarity up front, and also what education is needed from, you know, from the board. I mean, we've been doing a lot of work with the board on education this year, and just like answering questions, and I think that this is really needed for this crew also. And that establishes not just trust, but clarity of where things are actually at, and it is cool to have those spreadsheets and stuff like that, but underneath that, to have a system that's just the foundation is really solid. So we know what we can spend to and why, and we might not like it. I mean, I'm not gonna say that people are gonna like me all the time, but at least people are gonna get solid answers, and they're gonna, at the end of the day, that is what my hope is. So,
That's okay, people don't like me most of the time.
yeah. But, I just, yeah, that's just the role of CFO, is when you're the gatekeeper, and it's just kind of, I guess, it is like a teacher role in some way.
I appreciate tonight, and I think we've left the past few IBB meetings just like, it's 6:30, Peter slammed, we walked out, so I'm just wondering, because I feel like the next topic would be what's competitive, would be too big to handle in the next 13 minutes. I'm wondering if we could have the conversation about if there's homework for people to do between this meeting and not next Thursday, but the following Thursday, that I got told was not spring break. What homework needs to be done, what we're feeling we need as a whole entire team, what Christy might need from us, what we need from you guys, like, does anybody have thoughts on the table of something that needs to happen between now and 2 weeks from now?
I just don't know, we had Laura run the scattergram with what that's out there, I don't know.
That was great, that was all
that
I
what-
needed,
we
that was
Okay,
straight up
just
all I
making
needed.
sure that that's good, okay.
Now I can take that and I can.
I mean, I'm just thinking this meeting has been so much better than last week's meeting, and I really appreciate that, and I see that only 9 people are watching, and I hope they're all from CRES. But because, I mean, I kind of want people to see this district comparisons tab. That, I think, has just been a huge relief and might help go a long way in helping people start to feel less angry or frustrated and get back to like feeling a little bit of relief, like we're not, however we got here, we're here. And it's actually looking not bad. We're still here with the budget, which really sucks, but we're working on it. We're gonna get our steps, you know, not all the money, you know, like there's going to be some variables that come in. We're gonna talk about it. We're honoring this process. So.
And in the same token as that comment, I think looking at the rank tab and seeing how much our increase has been in the last, how many years is that, last 2017 to now 6-7 years, and we're far and away number one in our increases in that period of time.
So I know Megan's still working on it, but
Yeah.
I don't know what everybody thinks, but I think that would really be great to share.
And I kind of put that, added that spreadsheet or the table that Lisa suggested a couple weeks ago. And I put that in, at the very bottom, communication and education around teachers and staff. I put RCEA down. I guess it doesn't have to just come from us, but since Megan was the one who started it. Getting that cleaned up. So that we can start sharing that with people. Cause I think that education is important, I agree.
Yeah, I just need to work on the budget. That's what I need to do. But if you guys need anything, or have any questions, that would be what would be useful to know ahead of time so that we can do what we need to do to try to get that in.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
That's helpful.
It makes
Oh,
you,
so much.
and like as the teacher voice is like having you as the expert, and we appreciate all your hard work and know that you're putting in this massive effort, but also just being able to talk to you directly
Yeah.
makes a humongous difference, so thank
Oh,
you.
good. Yeah, oh, gosh, you guys are welcome. I am, like, this has been the hardest part of this role, is coming in here and then being behind all the closed doors, and I cannot stand it, because I like working with the people. And, it's just hard, because it's lengthy work. I'm really trying to get, and I'm trying, and my passion is to try to get you guys the numbers and the best numbers on the table that we can to get everybody what they need. Salaries, health insurance, all of these kind of things, and it's just been frustrating to keep working with systems that I have to fix. So my apologies that it's been one of those kind of years, but that's not how I like to really roll.
No, I appreciate you talking about sharing the salary comparison. I think unfortunately, I think it would be best if it came from RCEA, because I think that's gonna help build the trust and transparency back up. I think that health insurance comparison would also be great to share
Good one.
side by side, because I had no idea that so many people paid for theirs.
Interesting.
Anna, what are you calling, your presentation that you're putting together? That's next week?
Clunky. It's like the staff savings brainstorm.
A reveal of the,
Yeah, it's like all the ideas compiled and an explanation of where current things are. I mean, I would really appreciate after that gets out there in the world, that might bring some interesting food for thought. Cause there's definitely things that are on there that, like, it says certified IBB is gonna have to work on this. So like, I would love for us to be able to look at it and talk through it, and if there's more information needed, I mean, I'm trying to like link to a lot of resources and explanations and, yeah, so I wonder if we're going to have a note catcher, we just create some space at one of our meetings to talk through it.
What if I start a March 11th agenda that starts with what is competitive? And then going through what do you wanna call it, document?
Staff, it needs a better name. I mean, what it's called in like other organizations, is like the stop doing things list, which is very catchy, but,
I like the other name better.
Staff savings brainstorm. Yeah.
and that's gonna come out next week.
Next Tuesday, it'll be a very long spreadsheet with all the ideas and all the kind of analysis and current state and where we're at. And then I'm also just gonna do like a slide deck of the big ideas and some of the bigger things.
So this is like the new iteration of your weekly finance update.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of I think at some point, we're now, like getting into a regular budgeting cadence. I don't know that I need to keep flooding people's emails with which committee's meeting, but I'm hoping it kind of, we can't do a survey and not tell people what it's at. So it's also wanting to make sure folks understand that, like, no, a lot of these things are gonna keep going, just if possible. And I only say that because the federal government and state finance formula, but like, probably a lot of them not in a way that will impact right now the 25-26 budget, but will be things that we need to work on for 26-27, because I want us to stay there on those comps, and that means we're gonna have to keep moving. And if we're declining enrollment, then we're gonna have to get lean and mean. And really know that our money is going to drive the student outcomes that we want, to support staff in the ways that we want. And that's gonna take some time. So, yeah, that's coming.
On the state budget note, I'm wondering about timing for the 20th. I'm guessing a lot of people in this room are going to want to go to Denver. That's our next scheduled meeting of this group.
Oh.
Not spring break, but it is the Denver day.
Yeah, I mean, you do that day, Anna.
I move we meet in Denver.
On the bus, Aspen's doing theirs on the bus.
It's not the IBB day.
Didn't even think about that.
I thought,
It's not the all day IBB.
No,
But it's 2 weeks from right now.
It's just our evening
Yeah.
one.
it's our different night.
Oh, that's,
I didn't think about that.
no.
Yeah, we had something
There is no
like
more
that.
meeting than that. On that week, Wednesday, Wednesday.
We go to Wednesday?
I cannot do Wednesday, you guys, I trust you to be, but I'm out on Wednesdays.
I can do Wednesday.
You guys can make this decision in the next 4 minutes, it's a new world record for you. I'll be there whenever you say.
Or Monday.
On Monday. St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
You know, it would be really cool though to have a couple of days after when the legislature comes out with their, to really kind of think about that, so we have that.
Yeah.
information.
We'll have all of spring
That's the
break.
17th,
Yeah, I thought it was.
so a couple of days puts us back to the 20th.
No, yeah, I know,
Because I
the
think it's-
19th or.
That forecast is gonna come out, and then all of our team, like CEA, Rural Alliance, Colorado School Finance, are all gonna then help us distill that.
But if we're gonna meet, if our next meeting is to talk about,
What is competitive and. it's
yeah,
not
we don't
saving
necessarily
creates
need that
some discussion.
information
You're
at
right.
that meeting.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if we wanted to,
It would be
Monday the
nice.
17th.
Monday or
I can do
Wednesday?
Monday.
Did
We're
we do
not
it?
meeting
Kendall,
next week?
Jason,
No, because
No,
of
can you
conference.
guys do Monday?
Yep.
The 7th.
17.
Monday the 17th, following. Maybe 5 minutes late, but.
Awesome.
Excited day.
I have those meetings, but sure.
4:30 to 6:30 again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so proud of you guys.
Yeah, it was your push, Miles.
Miles are getting leaner and meaner, and
I-
St. Patrick's Day, like.
I've seen this conversation take 30 minutes and so.
Somebody's competitive tonight, so she's gonna beat that time. Go, getting ready. Awesome. All right.
I got motivation to stay.
So everyone's got
Well, they said early.
Oh. What a day. Okay.
Get out of here.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Miles, Jason, Lisa, Jason and Jacob, I'm trying to get with you. I have a bad scheduling question. I think I have to do that, right?
I was gonna say,